Welcome back to another MOTOBOB video, and look, there are loads of exciting new bikes on the market for 2022, and so in this video I'll go through the best of the nakeds, as usual in price order ascending, and at the end I'll tell you which ones I'd go for if I was buying a new naked bike this year. But before we get started, a quick shout out to my channel sponsors, Beeline Moto. They make these awesome little navigation devices that fit any bike, they look super clean, and then the app is really well designed and easy to use. I use mine on pretty much every ride. You'll see it in plenty of my riding videos. So for more information, check out the link in the description for my full review, as well as a link to their product page. Anyway, let's jump into the bikes, and the first on the list is the Kawasaki Z900 SE. You see, the standard Z900 has always been a popular bike for great performance at a really competitive price point. But for 2022, we've now got an SE version that takes the standard bike and adds some really nice premium components. Now the fundamentals are the same, so you still get the 948cc inline 4, and it makes 123 horsepower peak up at 9,500 RPM. The chassis is pretty much the same. You get largely the same looks, the same steel trellis frame, but what it does get is upgraded suspension. So the 41mm upside down fork is now fully adjustable as opposed to just rebound and preload on the standard bike. There's also a top-notch Öhlins S46 shock at the rear, and again it's fully adjustable and it comes with a remote preload adjuster. Brakes also get a boost in specs, so Brembo M4.32 calipers at the front. There's a new radial master cylinder from Nissin, and then steel braided hoses all round, all of which should lead to an improvement in power and feel. On top of those, there's a new dedicated paint job for the SE model, although it has to be said it looks almost indistinguishable from the equivalent finish on the regular Z900. That is apart from the yellow and gold of the fork and shock. Still, it looks like some bike for the money, and it should be hard to beat, unless that is you go for the newly updated GSX S1000 from Suzuki. This is another bike that offers a lot of bang for your buck, and it's also powered by an inline 4. It has got a bit more poke though, with 150 horsepower peak, with it revving out that little bit higher at 11,000 RPM. There's nothing particularly fancy about it, no lean sensitive rider aids, no TFT dash with phone connectivity and all that, but for 11 grand you'll get a bike that's got good adjustability in the suspension, decent Brembo brakes, and a proven and lively engine. And that's all in a package that I think looks pretty great. It was one of those bikes that got a bit of a mixed reception when it was launched. I think it's the stacked headlights, the angular front end, and the little winglets, but personally I really do like this one. I wouldn't have looked twice at the previous gen, it just looks so dated, but this is distinctive and modern and a lot more interesting to look at. Now I don't have a final price confirmed for this one, but it's the new 2022 factory edition of the APRILIA TUONO 660. The standard bike starts at 9,600, so this up-spec version should come in around the 11 or 12 grand mark. And look, the standard bike was already pretty good, 95 horsepower from its parallel twin, nice and light, good brakes and suspension, and a surprising amount of tech for the price. But this factory version adds 5 more horsepower, so that takes it up to 100 horses peak. And they've also shortened the final drive ratio for a little more snappiness under acceleration. A lithium battery contributes to 2 kilograms of weight savings. The inertial measurement unit comes as standard on this version, so that opens up some lean sensitive rider aids and cornering headlights. The quick shifter accessory is also as standard, and you get upgraded suspension with full adjustability. Visually, you get a dedicated factory dark paint job and a passenger seat cover for a more sporty look. And so yeah, basically with all those tweaks, it's like the ultimate TUONO 660. Like I say, the price is TBC, but let's hope it's closer to 11 than 12 grand. Otherwise, you're starting to get a little too close to some serious naked weaponry. Take the Yamaha MT-10 for example. Again, this one's just been announced with its 2022 update, so no final price, but the previous gen was 12.5 grand, so expect similar. You still get the 998cc crossplane inline 4 engine that's largely the same as the R1s, but in this bike it gets a more torquey, mid-range, road-focused tune. Now they made some tweaks for this year that were necessary to meet Euro 5 emissions regulations, but at the same time they still managed to add 6 more horsepower and an extra Nm of peak torque. Part of cleaning it up for emissions includes a new exhaust system, and typically they're now pretty restrictive in terms of sound, so it sort of kills the riding experience a little bit. Yamaha have sought to combat this with 3 intake ducts of varying lengths, as well as what they call acoustic amplifier grills on the sides of the tank. Now it's all been tuned for a better intake sound, and that's all directed towards the rider with those grills, just to give you that more visceral feel under acceleration. Now the chassis remains pretty much the same, but the electronics get a proper overhaul. So there's a new IMU, and that opens up cornering traction control and ABS, wheelie control, slide control, and there's also engine braking control and a few power levels. You've still got the option to spend an extra $1,000 or so for the SP version, and that one gets semi-active Öhlins suspension and its own special paint job. Both the standard bike and the SP version get the same visual update with new bodywork and a new front end that again is a little polarizing. But as always, I'd love to know what you think of it down in the comments. Now, one bike that I don't expect to split opinion looks-wise anyway is the new Ducati Streetfighter V2. In the same way that the Streetfighter V4 takes the Panigale V4, removes the fairing and adds some more comfortable flat bars, this bike applies the same approach to the Panigale V2. The result is something that ought to be a little more manageable and approachable than the V4, firstly in terms of the riding experience, but also the price. Now, peak power comes in at 153 horses instead of the 208 of the V4, and prices start at just under 15 grand instead of almost 19. It is still a lot of cash, but that's 4 grand less, and realistically it's still plenty of bike for most people. And it basically looks every bit as good. Me though, I'd be tempted by this one, the KTM Super Duke R Evo, which is new for 2022. Essentially, you've got the regular 1290 Super Duke R with its 180 horsepower V-twin and 140 Newton meters of peak torque, top-notch brakes, a lively chassis, all the electronic aids, but this one adds their WP Apex semi-active suspension for a little more convenience and versatility. So firstly, it ties the damping into the riding mode, so it'll firm up for sport mode, for example, and then back it off for more comfort in a mode like rain. It also gets automatic preload adjustments, so it detects the sag whether you're riding solo or 2-up, and then gives you enough preload to keep the bike level. And you can also use this feature to change the geometry. So if you want to jack it up and get the bike on its nose, that's going to give you slightly sharper handling. Or if you're doing a lot of stop-start town traffic, you might put it in its lowest mode and make it easier to get your feet down. It's got anti-dive as well, so it responds in real time and adjusts the fork so that you're not diving too much when you're hard on the brakes. And yeah, I had a chance to test a lot of these features out on the Super Adventure S last year, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Combine it with the Super Duke, which I also thought was brilliant, and I reckon it should be a match made in heaven. Now, just another 10 grand, so not bad at all, is the Ducati Streetfighter V4 SP. You see, the standard measly Streetfighter V4 starts at about 19 grand, and then for another 2 grand you can get the S version with the semi-active electronic suspension and some nice lightweight forged aluminium wheels. But if you need even lighter wheels, then thankfully there's the SP. This one gets carbon wheels. In fact, they're the same ones I think as the Panigale Superleggera, as are the quite rare Brembo Stylema R brake calipers. There's an SMT Evo dry clutch, CNC adjustable foot pegs, a carbon front mudguard, a lithium battery, so nice and light, and it comes with their winter test livery, complete with a brushed aluminium fuel tank. And that, of course, is on top of all the good stuff that you already get on the regular Streetfighter V4S, so 206 horsepower from the V4 engine, a top-notch chassis, and the full suite of the latest and greatest tech features and rider aids. But almost unbelievably, it might not be the most expensive bike on this list, although it does depend on the final pricing that they announced for this, the Norton V4 CR. Now, they announced it just at the end of last year at Motorcycle Live, and it's essentially a naked cafe racer version of their V4 Superbike. But they really haven't changed a great deal. The fairing is gone, of course. They fitted a mildly retro looking round headlight, but the bar position looks super low, and I'd expect a riding position that's almost aggressive as the V4 Superbike. Seeing it in the flesh though, it really is, for me anyway, a great looking bike. I'm a bit unsure about that fared sports version. It's got a slightly sad looking front end, but this one really does look spot on, especially in the black carbon version with the carbon wheels. Now it ought to be pretty quick too. The 1200cc V4 engine is said to make 185 horsepower in that fared version, so I'd expect similar here, if maybe slightly more biased toward the mid-range. You get super fancy Öhlins suspension, top draw brakes from Brembo. The electronics package is bang up to date, but yeah, it's that price that probably is going to be the main sticking point for most of us. I mean, their recent bikes have been like 28 grand and upwards, so I can't see this one being any different. So that's all of the new and updated bikes for this year, but what are they up against? Well, in the 600 to 700cc category, which is often pitched as the sort of first big bike group, there aren't really any brand new entrants this year. There's the Z650 from Kawasaki, Suzuki's SV650, the Honda CB650R, and the Yamaha MT-07, which has long been the benchmark. But my pick in this group would be the Triumph Trident. In fact, I bought one earlier this year, and yes, it is a little more expensive than some of those other options, but the handling is great. The triple engine is loads of fun. It has a slightly better finish and more techie features, and all while still being pretty affordable, so that's why it's my pick of the bunch. Then you've got the mid to large bikes, so like the Street Triple, the GSX S750 from Suzuki, Kawasaki Z900, Ducati Monster, the MV Agusta 800 triples. But my pick here, I think, would be the KTM 890 Ducat if you want something really sporty and lively, or if you want something a little more affordable and slightly more comfort biased with a bit more of a sat up riding position. Then there's the MT-09, which is still bags of fun, and it's a real snip at 9 grand. And then up above 1000 cc's, I mean, there's absolutely loads to choose from here. You've got the new Speed Triple, Kawasaki ZH2, BMW S1000R, the Street Fighters from Ducati that we just mentioned, the Aprilia TUONO V4, Honda CB1000R, and I'm sure I've probably forgotten plenty of others, but honestly, I reckon that 1290 Super Duke R Evo is going to be really difficult to beat. There's so much in this category though that it's really difficult to pick a winner, so I'd love to know from you which your pick would be down in the comments below. And if you're new here and you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.